Hello everyone, welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight we will talk about a question that blends neuroscience, physics, and philosophy into one fascinating puzzle. Quantum consciousness. Is your brain connected to the universe itself? We're going to explore whether the thoughts inside your mind are isolated chemical reactions, or whether they might be entangled with something far bigger. Before we dive in, let me ask you, what time is it where you are, and where are you joining from tonight? Share it in the comments. I love seeing how many places on Earth are connected here at the same moment in time. Now let's begin unraveling this mystery. For centuries, humans have wondered what consciousness truly is. We know that our brains are biological organs made of neurons, synapses, and electrical signals. Yet the experience of being alive, the sense of awareness, imagination, and self, is something science still struggles to explain. Neuroscience can describe the firing of neurons, but it doesn't fully explain how those firings give rise to subjective experience. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. And one idea that has emerged to try to explain it is that consciousness may not just come from biology. It may have roots in quantum mechanics, the strange and counterintuitive world of the very small. Quantum mechanics describes reality at the level of atoms and subatomic particles. Unlike classical physics, where objects follow predictable paths, quantum particles behave probabilistically. They can exist in superposition, being in multiple states at once until observed. They can become entangled, meaning the state of one particle is linked to another, no matter how far apart they are. They can tunnel through barriers, defying classical expectations. This bizarre behavior has made many scientists and philosophers wonder if consciousness itself could emerge from quantum processes in the brain. The idea of quantum consciousness has been popularized by thinkers like Roger Penrose, a physicist and mathematician, and Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist. Together, they developed a theory called Orchestrated Reduction, or Orch-OR. According to them, the brain's microtubules, tiny structural components inside neurons, may be capable of sustaining quantum states. These quantum states could then collapse in a way that produces moments of conscious experience. In other words, your awareness might not just be neurons firing, but the result of quantum-level events unfolding inside the brain. This idea is controversial. Many neuroscientists argue that the brain is too warm and wet for quantum coherence to last. Quantum states usually collapse quickly when disturbed by heat or noise, and the brain is both hot and full of molecular motion. Still, recent discoveries in biology suggest that quantum effects can play a role even in warm environments. For example, quantum tunneling is thought to be involved in enzyme reactions, allowing biological processes to happen faster than classical physics would predict. Quantum coherence has been observed in photosynthesis, where plants may exploit quantum effects to transfer energy efficiently. Even birds may use quantum entanglement in their eyes to navigate Earth's magnetic field. If nature already makes use of quantum mechanics in biology, could the brain do the same? What makes this especially intriguing is the possibility that consciousness might not just use quantum mechanics, but might actually be connected to the universe through it. In quantum theory, observation collapses superposition into a definite state. Some interpretations, like the Copenhagen interpretation, suggest the act of measurement plays a fundamental role in shaping reality. If consciousness itself is tied to quantum measurement, then your awareness might be woven into the very fabric of the universe. Think about what that would mean. When you have a thought, when you feel a sensation, or when you become aware of yourself in this moment, you might not just be a brain isolated inside a skull. You might be participating in a deeper process that links you to the quantum universe itself. Instead of consciousness being produced only by your brain could be a receiver, a filter, or a conduit for consciousness that is everywhere. This brings us to an ancient question that has been reimagined through modern science. Is consciousness local or universal? Many traditions, spiritual, mystical, and philosophical, have suggested that consciousness pervades the cosmos, that it is not created by the brain, but accessed by it. The quantum model offers a way, at least hypothetically, to bridge this idea with physics. If your brain can hold quantum states, and if those states are connected to the wider quantum field of reality, then in some sense, you are already entangled with the universe. To visualize this, imagine your brain as a radio. Classical neuroscience says the radio produces the music itself. The neurons and synapses generate your mind. The quantum consciousness model suggests instead that the radio is tuning into a field of consciousness, much like a radio tunes into invisible waves that are already present. Your thoughts and awareness would then be interactions with this deeper field, shaped by the brain, but not entirely confined to it. Critics argue that this is speculation more than science. They point out that there is no conclusive evidence yet that microtubules sustain quantum states in the brain. They note that neuroscience can already explain much of behavior, memory, and cognition without invoking quantum mechanics. Yet the mystery of subjective experience remains unsolved. Why should firing neurons feel like anything at all? Why should there be an inner movie of awareness? This is where the quantum idea remains compelling. It offers a possible link between the strange indeterminacy of quantum physics and the mystery of consciousness. One fascinating detail is the timing of brain processes. Experiments show that decisions can sometimes be detected in brain activity before a person becomes consciously aware of making them. This has led some scientists to question whether consciousness is just an after effect of neural processes. But if quantum states play a role, then consciousness could influence or emerge at the very moment of quantum collapse, introducing both unpredictability and meaning into brain activity. In other words, consciousness might not just be along for the ride, it could be actively shaping reality at the smallest scales. Now imagine extending this outward. If your consciousness is tied to quantum mechanics, and quantum mechanics is fundamental to the universe, then in a very real sense, your mind might be woven into the cosmos itself. Your thoughts could be small ripples in a universal sea of possibilities. Your awareness could be entangled, however subtly, with the stars, the galaxies, and the deep quantum vacuum that underlies all matter. This perspective doesn't just change how we see the brain, it changes how we see ourselves. You are not just an isolated creature of biology, you may be a node of awareness in a vast interconnected field. Science may not yet have proven this, but the very possibility opens up a profound way of looking at consciousness, not as an accident of neurons, but as a fundamental feature of reality. And as we begin this journey into quantum consciousness, I invite you to sit with this idea. The brain you carry is extraordinary, but perhaps it is even more extraordinary because it might be connected to the universe itself. What would it mean if your thoughts were not just private echoes inside your skull, but resonances of a deeper quantum reality that spans the cosmos? When we begin to explore the possibility that consciousness might be tied to quantum mechanics, the first step is to understand how the brain itself operates at both the classical and potentially quantum level. The human brain contains around 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others, creating trillions of connections. These neurons communicate using electrical signals and chemical messengers. Classical neuroscience sees this as the foundation of thought, memory, and awareness. But if consciousness requires more than just computation, as some scientists believe, then we need to look deeper. Inside every neuron is a cytoskeleton, a structural framework that maintains the shape of the cell and transports molecules. Among the most important elements of this cytoskeleton are microtubules, tiny hollow cylinders made of tubulin proteins. Penrose and Hameroff proposed that these microtubules are not just structural scaffolding, but potential sites for quantum computation. In their theory, the quantum states within microtubules can remain coherent long enough to perform meaningful processing. And when these states collapse, they create what we experience as conscious moments. This is where the idea becomes extraordinary, because if microtubules really are quantum processors, then consciousness might not only be influenced by the laws of physics, it could be rooted in the most fundamental layer of reality. The collapse of quantum states, also called objective reduction, could act as a bridge between the physical world and conscious awareness. According to Orch-OR, your moments of awareness are born from countless tiny quantum collapses happening inside the brain's microtubules. Skeptics counter this by pointing out the problem of decoherence. Quantum states are fragile. They collapse easily when exposed to heat, motion, or noise, and the brain is far from a quiet environment. With neurons firing, molecules colliding, and temperatures close to 37 degrees Celsius, it seems unlikely that quantum coherence could last long enough to play a meaningful role. But experiments in other areas of biology are challenging this assumption. In photosynthesis, for example, plants appear to exploit quantum superposition to transfer energy with remarkable efficiency, and they do so in warm, wet environments much like the brain. If quantum effects can persist long enough in plants, why couldn't something similar happen in the human brain? Let's widen the scope. Quantum biology is a young field, but it is already showing us that nature may use quantum effects in surprising ways. Migratory birds are believed to navigate using quantum entanglement between molecules in their eyes, allowing them to sense Earth's magnetic field. Enzymes may use quantum tunneling to speed up chemical reactions essential for life. Even our sense of smell might involve quantum vibration, where odor molecules are detected not just by shape, but by the way they resonate at the quantum level. If life has already found ways to harness quantum mechanics in so many domains, it is not unreasonable to imagine that evolution could have done the same with consciousness. Now imagine what this means philosophically. If consciousness is tied to quantum events in microtubules, then your awareness may be a process of the universe itself. Every conscious moment you experience could be a collapse of quantum states, a fundamental interaction between mind and the quantum world. In this sense, you are not separate from reality, you are part of its unfolding. Your awareness is not just a product of matter, but a dynamic process woven into the very laws of physics. Consider also the strange relationship between observation and reality in quantum mechanics. When a quantum system is not observed, it exists as a wave of probabilities. But the moment it is measured, it chooses a definite state. This raises a profound question. Does consciousness play a role in collapsing the wave function? If so, then awareness itself could be entangled with the way reality manifests. Every time you perceive, every time you focus, you might be participating in shaping the universe at the smallest scales. Einstein famously resisted this idea, saying he could not believe the moon only exists when someone looks at it. But quantum mechanics does not play by intuitive rules, and decades of experiments show that the act of measurement really does affect outcomes. The debate continues. Is it the measuring device, the environment, or consciousness itself that collapses quantum states? If consciousness is involved, then awareness may be fundamental, not secondary. You could be more than a byproduct of biology. You could be a participant in reality's unfolding at the quantum level. This leads to an even more radical possibility. Perhaps consciousness is not something that emerged late in the evolution of the brain, but something that has always been present in the fabric of the universe. This view is sometimes called panpsychism, the idea that consciousness, in some form, pervades all matter. Under this interpretation, electrons, atoms, and molecules might have rudimentary forms of proto-consciousness, and the brain, with its immense complexity, organizes these into the rich awareness we experience. While controversial, this idea resonates with the quantum perspective, because if quantum states are tied to consciousness, then consciousness may indeed be a fundamental property of the universe. Imagine the implications of this. The awareness you have right now, listening to these words, may not be confined to your skull. It may not even be generated entirely by your neurons. Instead, it could be a local manifestation of a universal field of consciousness, filtered and shaped by the structure of your brain. Your individuality remains unique, but your essence could be connected to something that spans the cosmos. Some thinkers have compared this to the ocean and the wave. Each person's consciousness is like a wave, distinct in form and movement, but ultimately part of the same vast ocean. When the wave rises, it is you, your thoughts, your identity, your memories. But when the wave falls, it returns to the ocean, indistinguishable from the whole. If consciousness is indeed connected to the universe, then perhaps your mind is a temporary pattern in an infinite sea of awareness. The scientific exploration of these ideas is still in its early stages. No experiment has yet proven that microtubules host quantum states tied to consciousness, but research is ongoing. Hameroff and others are looking for evidence of quantum vibrations in microtubules. Physicists are developing new ways to test coherence in biological systems, and as technology advances, we may one day detect whether quantum processes really do play a role in the brain. Whether or not this theory proves true, it forces us to rethink the relationship between mind and matter. It suggests that consciousness may not be an accident of evolution, but a phenomenon deeply tied to the universe itself. The brain may not just generate awareness, but tune into a deeper reality, and that possibility, however uncertain, invites us to see ourselves not as isolated beings, but as participants in something vast, mysterious, and interconnected. The human mind evolved to understand the everyday world: rocks falling, rivers flowing, the sun rising and setting. But the quantum world operates on principles so foreign that even physicists admit it feels more like science fiction than science. And yet, these rules are the foundation of reality. If consciousness is tied to them, then what we call mind might be operating on principles far stranger than we imagine. One of the most famous illustrations of quantum weirdness is Schrödinger's cat. You've probably heard it before. A cat is placed in a box with a mechanism triggered by the decay of a radioactive atom. If the atom decays, the mechanism releases poison and the cat dies. If it doesn't decay, the cat lives. Quantum mechanics tells us that until observed, the atom exists in superposition, both decayed and not decayed at once, which means the cat tied to the atom's fate is both alive and dead simultaneously until the box is opened. It sounds absurd, but experiments with particles consistently support this view. Reality exists in probabilities until measured. This brings us back to the central question: what counts as a measurement? Is it just interaction with the environment, or does consciousness itself play a role? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, like the Copenhagen interpretation, argue that measurement collapses probabilities into reality, but they leave open whether awareness is required. Others, like the many worlds interpretation, claim that the universe splits into multiple realities with each quantum event, so all outcomes exist but in separate branches. But if Penrose and Hameroff are right, and consciousness is tied to objective reduction, then your awareness is linked to the very act of quantum collapse itself. Each moment of experience would be not only inside your head, but part of reality crystallizing from probability into fact. Think about what that suggests. When you decide to raise your hand or recall a memory or feel joy, those experiences may not simply be products of neuron firing. They could be quantum events shaping reality in subtle ways. This would make consciousness not a latecomer in evolution, but something fundamental, woven into the way the universe works. Consider also the puzzle of free will. Neuroscience experiments have shown that brain activity can predict decisions milliseconds before a person is aware of making them. Some interpret this to mean free will is an illusion, but if consciousness is tied to quantum indeterminacy, then there may still be genuine unpredictability in the system. Quantum events are not strictly determined, they unfold probabilistically. This leaves room for consciousness to play a role in ways that are neither fully random nor fully predetermined. In this view, free will may emerge from quantum choice, giving us a genuine, if subtle, power to shape our own paths. Another concept worth exploring is entanglement. When two particles become entangled, their states are linked, no matter how far apart they are. Change one, and the other changes instantly, even across galaxies. This phenomenon has been confirmed repeatedly in experiments. If entanglement exists in the brain, perhaps between quantum states in microtubules, then consciousness might not be confined to one location. Different parts of the brain could remain connected in ways classical physics cannot explain. More provocatively, consciousness itself could be entangled with the wider universe, linking your awareness with reality on a fundamental level. This possibility echoes ancient ideas. Many spiritual traditions describe the mind as connected to a greater whole, whether it's a universal spirit, collective consciousness, or cosmic order. For centuries, these ideas were matters of faith, philosophy, or intuition, but quantum theory now provides a framework, however tentative, for imagining how such interconnectedness could work physically. Perhaps consciousness feels isolated because of the structure of the brain, but at its root, it may never have been separate at all. Of course, there are challenges. Critics argue that while quantum effects exist, scaling them up to something as complex as the brain is difficult to prove. A single electron can exist in superposition, but can billions of neurons sustain coherence? The skeptics remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and right now the evidence is incomplete. Still, science often begins with ideas that seem speculative before technology catches up. A century ago, quantum entanglement itself was dismissed by Einstein as spooky action at a distance. Today, it's a measured fact. Perhaps in the future, quantum consciousness will move from speculation to observation. The next step in understanding this theory is to consider what role time plays. Quantum mechanics does not treat time the same way we experience it. At small scales, events don't unfold in a simple, linear progression. Some interpretations suggest that quantum events can influence both past and future states, creating correlations that defy classical logic. If consciousness is linked to these processes, then our awareness of time may be more flexible than we realize. This could explain why memories sometimes feel vivid and immediate, why anticipation feels as real as the present, and why altered states of mind, through meditation, dreams, or even anesthesia, seem to warp our sense of time. Consciousness might not just ride along with time, but interact with it at a fundamental level. If that sounds abstract, let's ground it in something tangible: decision-making. Each time you choose, your brain weighs possibilities. On the surface, this looks like computation, neurons firing in patterns that encode different outcomes. But at a quantum level, possibilities could exist in superposition, with collapse creating the actual choice. Your lived experience of deciding may be the reflection of probabilities narrowing into reality. Consciousness would then be the process of reality selecting one path from many, again and again, moment by moment. Now let's imagine the universe through this lens. If every conscious being is participating in quantum collapse, then awareness itself is distributed throughout the cosmos, shaping reality collectively. You are part of a vast network of minds, not just human minds, but potentially all forms of awareness. From single cells using quantum processes, to animals navigating with quantum senses, to humans reflecting on existence, consciousness could be a universal phenomenon. And if it is, then perhaps the universe is not indifferent or mechanistic, but alive with awareness at every level. Even more astonishing is the possibility that the universe needs consciousness. Some interpretations of quantum theory suggest that without observation, reality remains indefinite. If that's true, then awareness is not a byproduct. It is a requirement for the universe to exist in the form we know it. In this perspective, the cosmos and consciousness are inseparable, two sides of the same process. You are not just in the universe is also in you. What we see then is a convergence of physics, neuroscience, and philosophy. The question of whether your brain is connected to the universe is not just poetic, it's scientific. Quantum theory provides a framework where such a connection is possible, even if unproven. Neuroscience provides the structure, quantum mechanics provides the mystery, and consciousness itself provides the undeniable fact of experience. Put them together, and you have a picture of the mind not as an isolated spark, but as part of the cosmic fire. If we take seriously the idea that consciousness may be linked to quantum mechanics, then we must ask, what exactly is the universe doing with awareness? Is consciousness just an accidental byproduct of physical processes? Or could it be central to the way reality unfolds? To approach this question, let's dive deeper into both the physics and the philosophy of what it means to be conscious in a quantum universe. One of the biggest puzzles in physics is the measurement problem. Quantum particles exist as waves of probability, with countless possible states. But when measured, the wave function collapses, and one state becomes real. What triggers this collapse? For decades, scientists have debated whether it's caused by interaction with the environment, by the physical act of measurement, or by consciousness itself. If it's the latter, then awareness doesn't just observe reality, it helps define it. This possibility unsettles our usual picture of the universe. We often imagine that the cosmos is purely material, existing independently of us. In that view, consciousness is an afterthought, something the brain happens to generate. But if consciousness participates in the collapse of the quantum wave function, then mind and matter are entangled in a way that can't be untangled. Reality would not be complete without awareness, and awareness would not exist without reality. Each needs the other. Roger Penrose proposed that consciousness arises from objective reduction, a process where quantum superpositions collapse on their own after a certain threshold of instability is reached. In the Orch-OR model, microtubules in the brain orchestrate this process, leading to the emergence of awareness. Whether or not this exact model is correct, The broader idea is provocative. Consciousness might be an intrinsic feature of physics, not an illusion or emergent property of complexity. This resonates with another concept, the universe as a self-observing system. Some physicists have suggested that the cosmos requires observers for reality to take definite form. John Wheeler, a physicist who worked with Einstein, called this the participatory universe. He imagined the universe as a kind of feedback loop, where observers are necessary for the universe to become real, and the universe in turn gives rise to observers. You could say the universe looks at itself through conscious beings. Now imagine that applied to you. Each time you notice something, whether it's a star in the sky, a memory from childhood, or the sensation of your breath, you may be participating in the universe's act of self-awareness. Consciousness would not be a private flicker inside your brain, but a point of contact between the cosmos and itself. Through you, the universe is aware of its own existence. This view becomes even more intriguing when we consider information. Many physicists believe that information is as fundamental to reality as matter and energy. In quantum mechanics, particles carry information about their states, and entangled particles share that information instantly. The brain, too, is an information processing system, transmitting signals across neurons and networks. If consciousness is tied to quantum information, then awareness itself could be an emergent property of information processing at the deepest level. What makes this compelling is that the universe is structured like a vast information network. From the spin of electrons to the arrangement of galaxies, information is stored and exchanged everywhere. Consciousness may therefore be the universe's way of processing its own information. The human brain is simply one of the most advanced systems yet discovered for doing so. But it may not be the only one. Consider the possibility that other systems, biological or otherwise, could also host consciousness. If quantum processes give rise to awareness, then any sufficiently complex arrangement of matter might experience some form of mind. This idea overlaps with panpsychism, the view that consciousness pervades all matter in varying degrees. A rock might have an unimaginably faint kind of proto-consciousness, while a human brain has a rich and a vivid one. The difference is not whether consciousness exists, but how much complexity and coherence a system can sustain. Skeptics argue that this stretches the concept too far. They warn against explaining mysteries with other mysteries. And it's true, we still lack empirical proof that consciousness depends on quantum mechanics. But the alternative explanations of consciousness, rooted only in classical neuroscience, also face limits. No one has yet explained how electrochemical signals in neurons create the vivid sensation of being. That gap, the so-called hard problem, is why quantum consciousness continues to attract attention. Let's bring in another layer, time. In quantum mechanics, time doesn't always behave in the way we expect. Some interpretations allow retrocausality, where events in the present are influenced by possibilities in the future. If consciousness is tied to quantum collapse, then your awareness may not be bound by a simple, linear arrow of time. Instead, consciousness could emerge from a dialogue between past, present, and future, knitting them together in ways we do not yet fully understand. This might sound abstract, but it has fascinating implications for memory, intuition, and imagination. Memory allows you to reach into the past, but why does it sometimes feel alive in the present moment, as though you're re-experiencing it? Intuition allows you to sense outcomes before they happen, but why does it sometimes feel uncanny, as though the future is tugging at you? Imagination allows you to envision possibilities not yet real, but why do some of those possibilities feel so vivid? If consciousness is quantum, perhaps it is not bound entirely to now, but touches the fabric of time itself. The philosopher David Chalmers once suggested that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe, like space, time, or mass. If so, then trying to explain it entirely in terms of neural activity may be missing the point. Consciousness would not be reducible to biology. Instead, biology would be one expression of a deeper reality. Your brain would be like an instrument designed by evolution to tune into this fundamental property, much like a radio tunes into invisible electromagnetic waves. The music doesn't originate inside the radio. The radio gives it form and voice. In the same way, the brain could give consciousness the form of human experience, but the source might be woven into the universe itself. When we entertain these ideas, something profound happens. The boundaries between physics, biology, and philosophy begin to blur. Consciousness stops being a private mystery and becomes a cosmic one. You are no longer simply a brain in a body. You are a participant in the quantum unfolding of the universe. Awareness ceases to be an isolated spark and instead becomes a window into the deepest layers of reality. This perspective changes how we see ourselves. If your mind is entangled with the universe, then the distance between you and the stars is not as vast as it seems. You carry within you the same quantum fabric that makes up galaxies, black holes, and the empty vacuum of space. Your awareness is not an anomaly. It is an expression of the universe's own potential to know itself. One of the most remarkable things about consciousness is that it feels so familiar, yet it remains so mysterious. Every waking moment, you are immersed in it. You can think, feel, imagine, and remember. You can look inward at your own thoughts or outward at the world, and yet for all its intimacy, no one has ever captured what consciousness is in a complete scientific sense. That's why the idea of quantum consciousness is so captivating. It offers a framework where awareness might not just be an emergent property of neurons, but something far deeper, perhaps as fundamental as the universe itself. To understand how this might work, let's consider one of the most striking features of quantum mechanics: non-locality. When particles are entangled, they remain linked no matter how far apart they are. Change the state of one, and the other responds instantly, even if they are separated by light years. This defies classical ideas about space and time, where nothing can travel faster than light. In the quantum world, distance seems irrelevant. If consciousness involves entanglement within the brain, or between the brain and the wider universe, then perhaps awareness too is not confined by distance. Your mind could be linked to reality in ways we have yet to imagine. This invites a radical rethinking of individuality. We normally think of ourselves as separate beings, each housed in a body, each with a private mind. But if consciousness is quantum and therefore non-local, then separateness may be an illusion. Your awareness might be distinct, but not disconnected. Beneath the surface, you could be entangled with others, with the earth, and with the cosmos itself. Some traditions have long claimed that all beings are one, that individuality is a surface feature, and that unity lies underneath. Quantum consciousness may offer a scientific lens through which to reconsider that ancient insight. Of course, entanglement is not the only quantum effect worth examining. Superposition is equally fascinating. A quantum particle can exist in multiple states at once until measured. If consciousness operates at this level, then awareness might also involve superposition. Think of how you can hold conflicting possibilities in mind before making a decision, or how you can imagine multiple futures simultaneously. Perhaps your brain does this not only at the level of neurons firing, but at the quantum level. where superposed states mirror the richness of possibility in thought. Then comes collapse, the moment when one possibility becomes real. In your daily life, this feels like a choice, a decision, a moment of clarity. But at the quantum level, it is the narrowing of probability into actuality. If your conscious experience emerges from these collapses, then awareness itself may be the interface between possibility and reality. You do not merely observe the world, you help determine which version of the world becomes real. Let's explore another layer: quantum vacuum fluctuations. Even in the emptiest space, particles flicker in and out of existence. This so-called quantum foam is the background of reality, a seething field of possibility. Some physicists believe the entire universe may have arisen from such fluctuations. If consciousness is connected to quantum processes, then perhaps your awareness is linked to this same universal field. You're not a static observer, but part of the living fabric that gives rise to both matter and mind. This possibility leads us to consider consciousness as a field. Just as electromagnetic fields permeate space, perhaps a consciousness field does too. The brain might not generate consciousness, but instead interact with this field, shaping it into personal awareness. This would explain why consciousness feels both deeply personal and strangely universal. You are a unique pattern within a field that extends beyond you, much like a wave on the ocean. Skeptics push back, saying that such a consciousness field is speculative and unfalsifiable, and they're right, at least for now. But the same was once true of many scientific ideas. Gravity, electromagnetism, and even atoms were once invisible concepts inferred from their effects. If consciousness has similar roots, then one day we may find indirect evidence. For now, the idea expands the horizon of what's possible, reminding us that the brain may be more than a generator of thoughts. It may be a receiver and amplifier of something far larger. Now let's think about evolution. Why would consciousness evolve at all? From a purely material perspective, awareness might seem unnecessary. Organisms could survive by processing information unconsciously, like computers. Yet consciousness exists, and it gives us experiences of beauty, love, curiosity, and meaning. If consciousness were only an evolutionary accident, why would it feel so central to existence? But if consciousness is tied to the fabric of the universe, then evolution may have built brains as structures capable of accessing and refining it. Awareness would not be an accident, but a natural expression of the cosmos through living systems. This perspective reframes your place in the universe. Instead of being a byproduct of random neural firings, your consciousness may be part of the deep structure of reality. When you think, when you imagine, when you feel alive, you are expressing the same quantum principles that shape stars, galaxies, and black holes. Your awareness could be a local echo of the universe's awareness, a way the cosmos experiences itself from within. Think about the sense of wonder you feel when gazing at the night sky. That feeling is not just awe, it may be resonance. You are looking out at the universe, but you are also part of it. Your awareness and the stars are not separate phenomena. They are both patterns in the same cosmic field. The atoms in your brain were forged in ancient stars, and the awareness within you may be tied to the same quantum processes that guide the dance of galaxies. You are the universe looking back at itself through the lens of your mind. And this brings us to one of the most profound implications of quantum consciousness: meaning. If awareness is fundamental, then consciousness is not an accident in a meaningless universe. It is central, necessary, and cosmic. Your thoughts, your experiences, your inner life, all of it matters because it is part of the way reality itself unfolds. In this view, consciousness is not just about neurons, not just about brains, but about the universe knowing itself. When we talk about consciousness, it's easy to focus only on the brain, as though awareness begins and ends with neural circuits. But if quantum mechanics plays a role, then the scope of consciousness expands far beyond the skull. It forces us to ask a radical question: is the brain the source of consciousness, or is it a tool that channels it? To answer this, let's revisit the microtubule hypothesis. Inside your neurons, microtubules form dynamic scaffolding that gives cells structure and helps transport molecules. In the Orch-OR theory, these tiny structures may also support quantum states. If true, then the brain functions not only as a biological computer, but also as a quantum device. This would mean that your thoughts are shaped by collapses of superpositions occurring inside microtubules, moments where possibility becomes actuality. But what's fascinating is that this would imply the brain does not generate consciousness from nothing. Instead, it organizes and focuses something that already exists in the quantum domain. Think of a prism splitting light. The light already exists invisible and undifferentiated until the prism bends it into colors. Similarly, the brain could be the prism that bends universal consciousness into the vivid experience of human awareness. Each mind would then be a unique spectrum of consciousness, shaped by biology, memory, and personality, but ultimately drawn from the same underlying source. Now consider what this means for individuality. If consciousness is fundamental, then each person is a local expression of a universal mind. You are not separate from the universe. You are a perspective within it. Your individuality matters, but it is also part of something greater. This dual nature, being both distinct and connected, may explain the profound tension we feel between isolation and unity. On one hand, you are undeniably yourself, with your own thoughts and memories. On the other, you sense that you are part of something vast, a feeling echoed in art, philosophy, and spirituality throughout history. Quantum mechanics provides a physical language for this. Entanglement shows that separation is not absolute. Superposition shows that multiple possibilities can coexist. Collapse shows that reality is not fully determined until observed. These principles mirror the mystery of consciousness, how you can feel separate yet connected, how you can imagine multiple futures, and how your awareness seems to participate in shaping reality. But here's a challenge. If consciousness is universal, why does it feel so private? Why can't you directly access the minds of others, if all awareness comes from the same source? One possible answer lies in the brain's filtering role. Just as a radio can tune into one frequency out of many, your brain may tune consciousness into a personal stream, shaped by your senses and memories. You experience your life not because consciousness is isolated, but because your brain creates a boundary, a frame that defines your perspective. This brings us to the idea of integrated information. Neuroscientist Giulio Tononi developed Integrated Information Theory, YIIT, which proposes that consciousness corresponds to the degree of information integration in a system. The brain is conscious because it integrates massive amounts of information into a unified whole. But if consciousness also depends on quantum processes, then integration may occur not just at the neural level, but at the quantum level too. Awareness would then be both biological and fundamental, shaped by information woven into the universe itself. This perspective also raises questions about artificial intelligence. If consciousness depends only on complexity and integration, then advanced AI systems might one day become conscious. But if quantum processes are necessary, then machines made of silicon may lack the right structures. consciousness might not emerge from computation alone, but from the unique way biology interacts with the quantum world. If so, then human awareness is not simply an advanced form of processing. It is a reflection of the universe through organic matter, something machines may never replicate. Another fascinating layer comes from cosmology. The universe itself seems fine-tuned for life and mind. Physical constants, like the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, or the expansion rate of the cosmos, are set at values that make stars, planets, and biology possible. If they were slightly different, consciousness might never have arisen. Some physicists explain this through the multiverse, where countless universes exist with different constants, and we happen to be in one that supports life. But others wonder whether consciousness is not just an outcome of the universe, but a reason for its structure. In other words, perhaps the universe is not just compatible with consciousness, it is designed to produce it. This is reminiscent of the anthropic principle, which states that the universe must be such that conscious beings can observe it, because otherwise we wouldn't be here. But quantum consciousness takes it further. Perhaps awareness is not just a condition of existence, but a co-creator of it. If observation collapses possibilities into reality, then consciousness may have been fundamental in shaping the universe from its earliest moments. Let's think about time again. The brain experiences time as a flow, but physics describes it differently. Einstein showed that time is relative, not absolute. It stretches and compresses depending on speed and gravity. In quantum mechanics, time becomes even stranger. Some interpretations suggest that quantum events are not ordered strictly by past and future, but by correlations that transcend linear time. If consciousness arises from these processes, then perhaps your sense of now is only one slice of a much larger temporal landscape. Your awareness may be more flexible than you realize, rooted in a fabric where past, present, and future are not separate, but interwoven. This could explain the peculiar elasticity of consciousness. In dreams, time stretches and compresses. In moments of crisis, time slows down. In meditation or flow states, time sometimes disappears altogether. If awareness is tied to quantum time, then these experiences may not just be illusions, but glimpses of how consciousness actually relates to the universe. And this returns us to the fundamental question: is your brain connected to the universe? If quantum processes shape awareness, then the answer is yes, in ways both literal and profound. Your mind would not be a closed system, but an open one, woven into the quantum fabric of reality. You would not just inhabit the universe, you would be an active participant in its unfolding. That realization carries weight. It suggests that your awareness is not trivial, not an evolutionary accident, but a reflection of the universe itself. Each thought, each perception, each moment of being may be a tiny crystallization of reality, a bridge between possibility and actuality. You are the cosmos, experiencing itself from one unique perspective, entangled with the whole. If consciousness is in any way connected to the quantum foundation of reality, then the implications extend beyond biology, beyond the brain, and even beyond physics as we know it. It pushes us toward one of the deepest mysteries in science and philosophy. What is the nature of reality itself, and does consciousness help define it? Let's start with a thought experiment. Imagine you're looking at a tree. Light bounces off the leaves, enters your eyes, gets converted into neural signals, and eventually you have the experience of seeing a tree. That's the standard explanation. But notice what it leaves out. Where in this process does raw sensory input turn into the subjective feeling of green, of texture, of being aware that you're looking? Physics and neuroscience can explain the mechanics of photons and neurons, but the jump to conscious experience, the hard problem of consciousness, as philosopher David Chalmers calls it, remains unresolved. Quantum theories of consciousness attempt to bridge this gap by suggesting that subjective experience is not an emergent byproduct of physical processes, but a fundamental feature of reality itself. In this view, consciousness is woven into the universe at the deepest level, in the same way that space, time, and energy are. The brain doesn't create awareness. It localizes it, channels it, and gives it form. To test whether this could be true, researchers have looked for places where quantum mechanics already influences the macroscopic world. Biology provides some intriguing examples. In photosynthesis, plants use quantum coherence to transfer energy with remarkable efficiency. In bird navigation, migratory species appear to rely on quantum entanglement within specialized proteins to sense Earth's magnetic field. These discoveries show that living systems are not isolated from the quantum realm. They can, under the right conditions, harness it. If plants and birds do this, could human brains be doing something similar, but with consciousness? The Orch-OR model suggests exactly that, but it's not the only theory. Another perspective, known as panpsychism, argues that consciousness is a basic property of matter. Just as matter has mass and charge, it may also have a form of experience. In this framework, even subatomic particles contain the tiniest seeds of awareness. Your brain doesn't generate consciousness out of nothing. It organizes these seeds into a coherent whole. What makes you different from a rock is not that you have consciousness and the rock doesn't, but that your consciousness is vastly more integrated, complex, and self-aware. At first, this sounds strange, even mystical, but it has a kind of logic. If you start with the assumption that consciousness is emergent, you face the problem of explaining how subjective experience could ever arise from non-experiencing matter. If instead you assume that some form of proto-consciousness exists in all matter, then human consciousness is just the highest expression of something fundamental. Physics already treats properties like spin or charge as irreducible. Why couldn't consciousness be one of those fundamental properties? Now let's consider quantum entanglement again. When two particles are entangled, their states remain linked no matter how far apart they are. This suggests a universe where separation is not absolute, where information exists in a holistic way. If consciousness is rooted in such processes, then perhaps awareness is not confined to the brain at all. Perhaps your consciousness extends into the world around you, entangled with the very fabric of reality. This would explain why so many people throughout history have felt that their consciousness could stretch beyond their body, whether in mystical experiences, deep meditation, or moments of awe in nature. These states could be glimpses of a truth, that the boundaries of mind and universe are far more porous than we usually believe. Another important angle is information. Some physicists, like John Wheeler, propose that reality itself is fundamentally informational. His famous phrase, "it from bit," suggests that the physical universe emerges from information at the quantum level. If this is correct, then consciousness may be intimately tied to the processing of information, not just in the brain, but in the cosmos itself. You could think of reality as a vast quantum information network, with consciousness as both the interpreter and participant. In this sense, your mind is not separate from the universe. It is the way the universe knows itself. This idea resonates with many spiritual traditions, but here it's expressed in scientific language. Consider the parallels. Hindu philosophy speaks of Atman, the individual soul, being one with Brahman, the universal reality. In Buddhism, consciousness is seen as interdependent and continuous, not confined to the self. These ancient insights echo what quantum theories of consciousness are beginning to suggest, that awareness may be universal, and the individual self a temporary expression of it. What about death? If consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, then perhaps it doesn't simply end when the body ceases. Instead, the specific pattern of awareness you know as you may dissolve, but the underlying consciousness continues, much like a wave disappearing back into the ocean. This doesn't necessarily prove reincarnation or afterlife in a personal sense, but it does suggest that consciousness is more enduring than the brain itself. Just as matter and energy are never destroyed but only transformed, awareness may be another fundamental aspect that cannot be extinguished. Skeptics, of course, point out that none of this has been definitively proven. And they're right. The link between quantum physics and consciousness remains speculative, and many scientists argue that the brain operates too warm and noisy for quantum states to persist long enough to matter. But others counter that biology has found clever ways to maintain coherence even under such conditions. The debate is ongoing, and that's what makes this field so fascinating. It sits right at the edge of what we know and what we can imagine. Let's also address the role of free will. If quantum processes underlie consciousness, then free will might not be an illusion. In a purely classical, deterministic universe, everything, including your thoughts and choices, would be predictable from prior conditions. But quantum mechanics introduces indeterminacy, genuine unpredictability. If your brain operates at this quantum level, then your choices are not just the inevitable result of physical laws. They contain elements of possibility, spontaneity, and true freedom. Free will might emerge not in spite of physics, but because of it. Now take this even further. If consciousness participates in reality through quantum processes, then you are not merely observing the universe, you are helping shape it. Your perception, your awareness, might play a role in determining how the world unfolds around you. This doesn't mean you can bend reality at will, but it does suggest that consciousness is more active than passive, more creative than receptive. You are not a spectator in the cosmos. You are part of its unfolding logic. And that brings us back to the central question: is your brain connected to the universe? Everything we've discussed, entanglement, superposition, panpsychism, integrated information, and the informational nature of reality, point toward yes. Not in the sense of being connected by a wire or a cord, but in the deeper sense of being woven into the very fabric of existence. The universe is not out there while you are in here. The boundary is an illusion created by perspective. At the quantum level, you and the cosmos are inseparable. Think about what that means for your daily life. Every time you experience something, a conversation, a memory, a moment of beauty, you are participating in the universe's way of knowing itself. Your brain is a portal, a channel, through which universal consciousness flows and becomes self-aware. You are not small or insignificant. You are a crucial part of reality's vast tapestry, a unique perspective that has never existed before and will never exist again in quite the same way. If your consciousness is indeed linked to the universe at a quantum level, then the next question is, what does that actually mean for the way you live, think, and experience reality? It's one thing to discuss entanglement and information in abstract terms. It's another to realize that these ideas might apply to every moment of your life. Let's begin with perception. You may think of your senses as passive receivers, like windows that let in light and sound from the outside world. but neuroscience tells us that perception is an active construction. Your brain interprets raw input, fills in gaps, makes predictions, and creates a seamless narrative of what's out there. Quantum theories of consciousness suggest something deeper, that your awareness is not only interpreting reality, but actively participating in how reality shows up. In other words, you're not just seeing the world, you're co-creating it. This idea is not as far-fetched as it sounds. In quantum physics, the act of measurement changes what is measured. A particle in superposition, a state of multiple possibilities, collapses into one definite outcome only when observed. If consciousness plays a role in this process, then observation is not passive. It is creative. Every conscious act of awareness is a moment where potential becomes actual, where possibility crystallizes into form. Now imagine this scaled up from subatomic particles to the level of your daily life. You make choices, set intentions, and focus attention. Each of these acts is, in a sense, a measurement. You are collapsing possibilities into actualities. Your consciousness doesn't simply float above physical events. It helps direct them. This perspective resonates strongly with the idea of manifestation, not as magical thinking, but as a fundamental feature of quantum consciousness. What you attend to, what you believe, shapes how reality unfolds around you. Another profound implication is connection. If entanglement exists at the root of reality, and if consciousness is entangled too, then your awareness is not isolated. You are deeply connected to others, to the environment, to the universe itself. This is not just poetic, it may be literal. Experiments in quantum biology already show that entanglement can persist in living systems. If our brains too operate with quantum coherence, then you may be linked in ways science is only beginning to explore. This could explain phenomena that have long been dismissed as anecdotal: telepathy, synchronicity, and the feeling of being in tune with someone else without words. These experiences might not be paranormal at all. They might be glimpses of a deeper interconnectedness, moments when entangled awareness resonates across distance. Of course, mainstream science remains cautious here, but the possibility is tantalizing. Let's talk about time. In quantum mechanics, the past, present, and future are not as rigidly separated as in our everyday perception. Some interpretations suggest that future events can influence present outcomes, a concept known as retrocausality. If consciousness is tied to these quantum processes, then perhaps awareness too is not bound by linear time. This may be why humans have intuitive flashes, precognitive dreams, or the sense of déjà vu. Your brain could be glimpsing information that is not limited to the now, because consciousness is not strictly confined to one direction of time. If this is true, then your mind is more than a recorder of events. It is a navigator of probabilities across time. Choices you make now ripple backward and forward, shaping both memory and possibility. Your awareness might be participating in a timeless network where past and future are interwoven. Imagine how differently you might approach life if you saw yourself not as trapped in a sequence of ticking moments, but as part of a fluid, interconnected flow where time itself is malleable. Another question arises: if consciousness is fundamental, could it exist without matter at all? Some physicists suggest that the universe itself is conscious at some level, a concept sometimes called cosmic consciousness. This does not mean the universe thinks in words or makes decisions like a human. Instead, it suggests that awareness permeates all existence, manifesting differently depending on complexity. In you, it takes the form of self-reflection. In the cosmos, it may be more diffuse, like an ocean of awareness with no fixed boundaries. This perspective transforms how you might view death. If consciousness is not merely produced by the brain, but is instead a universal phenomenon, then the end of the physical body may not be the end of awareness. Instead, what you call you could be a temporary localization of universal consciousness. When the body ends, awareness does not vanish. It returns to the larger whole. This doesn't prove specific religious notions of the afterlife, but it does suggest that the essence of consciousness may be far more durable than flesh and neurons. From here, let's consider the role of meaning. Human beings are driven to seek meaning in life, to connect experiences into narratives. Traditional science sometimes portrays this as a byproduct of evolution, useful for survival, but not reflective of any deeper truth. But if consciousness is fundamental, then meaning is not just a projection, it is part of the fabric of reality. The very fact that you ask questions about purpose may indicate that the universe itself is structured to be meaningful. Consciousness is not an accident in a meaningless cosmos. It is the lens through which meaning emerges. Now think about creativity. Where do new ideas come from? Neuroscience can trace neural activity, but the spark of insight, the aha moment, remains mysterious. If consciousness connects to the quantum realm, then creativity may involve tapping into possibilities beyond ordinary linear thought. Your brain could be drawing from a field of potential, collapsing novel outcomes into awareness. Every invention, every work of art, every breakthrough is not just an internal brain event. It is the universe discovering new ways of expressing itself through you. This ties directly into collective consciousness. If awareness is not isolated, then groups of people may co-create shared realities. Cultures, societies, even civilizations might function as larger organisms of consciousness, weaving together individual awareness into a collective mind. This could explain why shifts in mass consciousness, like cultural renaissances or revolutionary movements, seem to happen almost spontaneously, as though a deeper field of awareness is pushing humanity forward. Skeptics, of course, warn that these ideas risk sliding into metaphysics rather than science. And that is fair. At present, no single experiment definitively proves that consciousness is quantum in nature. But the same could once be said of electricity, germs, or black holes. Phenomena once mysterious, now foundational to science. The absence of proof does not mean absence of reality. It simply means we have more to learn. One promising frontier is quantum computing. Unlike classical computers, which process information in binary steps, quantum computers exploit superposition and entanglement to solve problems in ways that mimic how consciousness seems to work, simultaneously, holistically, with leaps that classical logic cannot explain. If artificial systems built on quantum principles begin to show signs of awareness, it could lend support to the idea that consciousness truly emerges from quantum processes. If that happens, the line between mind and machine may blur. But more importantly, it may reveal that consciousness was never confined to human brains in the first place. It may be a principle of reality itself waiting to be recognized. And so, we arrive at a simple yet staggering conclusion. Your brain is not just connected to the universe, it is an expression of it. The atoms in your neurons were forged in stars. The quantum processes guiding your thoughts are the same processes shaping galaxies. Consciousness is the bridge, the thread that ties inner and outer worlds together. You are not separate. You are the universe, aware of itself, thinking, wondering, creating through the lens of your mind. If consciousness is not just an emergent property of the brain, but a fundamental feature of the universe, then the most important question is not what is consciousness, but what is it for? Why would the universe produce awareness at all? Physics can explain forces and particles without reference to subjective experience. Evolution can explain survival traits. But why should matter be aware of itself? One possibility is that consciousness is the way the universe explores itself. Every perception, every thought, every act of awareness is the cosmos experiencing one of its own possible configurations. In this sense, you are not a detached observer. You are a channel through which the universe looks at itself. Your thoughts are not just yours. They are the unfolding of cosmic possibility into localized awareness. Think about how stars give rise to atoms, which form molecules, which become cells, which become organisms. Each stage of complexity allows new forms of interaction and expression. Consciousness may be the next level of this unfolding, a way for the universe to not just exist, but to know that it exists. Through you, the cosmos reflects, questions, and creates meaning. This perspective changes how you might view individuality. On one hand, you are a unique point of awareness, with memories, choices, and experiences that no one else has. On the other, you are inseparable from the universal field of consciousness. Your individuality is like a wave on the ocean, distinct for a time, yet never separate from the water. When you die, the wave subsides, but the ocean remains. And in some sense, so do you. The implications for ethics are profound. If consciousness is universal, then to harm another being is to harm another expression of the same awareness you share. Compassion, empathy, and cooperation are not merely moral preferences. They may be natural consequences of recognizing interconnected consciousness. When you realize that others are not truly other, but extensions of the same field of awareness, then kindness is not an obligation. It is alignment with reality itself. Now let's return to the brain. If consciousness is universal, why do we need a brain at all? The brain may function like a receiver, tuner, or filter. Instead of generating consciousness, it shapes universal awareness into a form that can interact with the physical world. This idea, sometimes called the filter theory, suggests that consciousness is always present, but the brain narrows it into a stream suitable for survival. Like a radio pulling one station out of a field of frequencies, your brain tunes the infinite into the manageable. If this is true, then altered states of consciousness, dreams, meditation, psychedelic experiences, are not creating new awareness, but loosening the filter. They allow you to access broader aspects of the universal field, beyond the narrow band of everyday perception. This could explain why people in such states often report feelings of unity, timelessness, and connection with the cosmos. The filter is temporarily relaxed, and awareness expands. This possibility has scientific traction. Studies on psychedelics using brain imaging have found that rather than lighting up new regions of the brain, these substances decrease activity in the default mode network, the system that governs self-referential thinking. When the filter of the self relaxes, broader patterns of consciousness may become accessible. This aligns with the idea that the brain is not the origin of awareness, but the limiter of it. If awareness is filtered, then what you call you is a narrowed channel through which infinite consciousness flows. This realization does not diminish individuality, it enriches it. You are both a specific person with unique experiences and a doorway to something universal. Recognizing this dual nature can shift how you live. Instead of feeling isolated, you can experience yourself as part of a vast continuum of awareness, both personal and cosmic. Let's also consider synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that seem too precise to be random. From a purely statistical view, coincidences are inevitable. But from the perspective of interconnected consciousness, synchronicities may be signals of deeper alignment. If your mind is entangled with the universe, then inner states and outer events are not separate. They are reflections of the same underlying field. When you notice synchronicities, you may be glimpsing the coherence of that field, moments where inner awareness and external reality line up in meaningful patterns. Now imagine applying this to creativity and problem solving. If the mind is entangled with universal consciousness, then inspiration may come not just from your brain, but from the field itself. You are not inventing out of nothing. You are tuning into patterns already present at a deeper level of reality. This could explain why multiple inventors often arrive at the same breakthrough independently, as though tapping the same well of possibilities. Consciousness may not be a private property, but a shared resource, accessible in different ways. The connection between quantum processes and creativity becomes clearer when you think about how quantum systems operate. They explore multiple possibilities simultaneously, then collapse into one outcome when measured. Creativity mirrors this process. Your mind entertains multiple ideas, scenarios, and associations before one emerges as the insight or solution. Your consciousness, working with quantum-like dynamics, may be designed to navigate possibilities in ways linear logic cannot. This brings us to free will. If consciousness shapes outcomes by collapsing possibilities, then your choices matter. Free will is not an illusion, it is participation in the unfolding of reality. At every moment, countless futures exist in potential. Through awareness and intention, you help determine which ones crystallize. This is a radical view of agency. You are not a passive character in a predetermined universe. You are a co-creator of reality itself. Of course, this raises difficult questions. If consciousness creates reality, why do bad things happen? Why do suffering, chaos, and tragedy exist? One possibility is that consciousness operates at multiple levels, and individual will is not the only force at play. Collective consciousness, physical laws, randomness, and the interplay of countless choices all shape outcomes. Your awareness influences reality, but it does not control it absolutely. Life is a dance between freedom and limitation, creation and chaos. Still, this view reframes challenges. Instead of seeing life as something that happens to you, you can see it as something you are actively co-creating. Even difficulties may serve a role in expanding awareness, teaching lessons, or opening new possibilities. Consciousness does not eliminate struggle, it transforms its meaning. At the edge of this exploration lies perhaps the most mysterious question. If consciousness is fundamental, where did it come from? Did the universe begin aware, or did awareness emerge gradually? Some physicists propose that consciousness has no origin, because it is not a product of the universe, it is the ground of the universe. Space, time, matter, and energy arise from consciousness, not the other way around. In this view, the Big Bang was not just the birth of matter, but the differentiation of infinite awareness into form. If that is true, then consciousness is not in the universe. The universe is in consciousness. Your brain, your body, the stars, the galaxies, these are ripples within a vast ocean of awareness. You are not a small spark in a dead void. You are the living cosmos, aware of itself, temporarily localized in human form. This idea may sound spiritual, but it is also a logical possibility. If science continues to show that quantum processes underlie consciousness, then the old materialist model, that matter gives rise to awareness, may need to be reversed. Awareness may be the fundamental substrate, with matter as one of its many expressions. And if that is true, then everything changes. Your thoughts are not isolated brain events. Your awareness is not trapped in a skull. You are part of something infinite, timeless, and interconnected. You're not looking out at the universe. You're the universe looking in at itself. We've now reached the end of our journey through one of the deepest questions imaginable. Is your brain connected to the universe? We've looked at quantum mechanics, entanglement, non-locality, cosmic evolution, and the possibility that consciousness is not simply an accidental byproduct of neural activity, but a fundamental property of reality itself. Now let's bring these threads together into a final reflection. The old scientific view of the mind was mechanical. The brain was a machine, a collection of neurons firing in patterns. When the machine stopped, consciousness ended. Awareness was a side effect, like steam from a boiling pot. Interesting, but irrelevant. But the more we learn about quantum processes and the mysteries of consciousness, the more this explanation feels incomplete. Consciousness does not fit neatly into the machinery of matter. It resists reduction. If quantum processes are indeed involved in how the brain generates or filters consciousness, then awareness may not be confined to your skull at all. It could be woven into the very structure of reality, a field that your brain interacts with, shapes, and channels. In this view, death is not the extinguishing of consciousness, but the end of one channel. The field remains, and in some sense, so do you. This is not a guarantee of immortality, but it does suggest that awareness is larger than the fragile body and mind you temporarily inhabit. You are more than you appear to be. Think of a radio. When the radio is damaged, the music becomes distorted. When the radio breaks entirely, the music stops. But the broadcast has not ended. The signal continues, invisible, waiting for another receiver. If your brain is the receiver, then your consciousness may be the signal. It is not destroyed when the body fails. It persists, though perhaps in a form we cannot yet grasp. This perspective changes how you might view life. Instead of seeing yourself as a fleeting accident, you can begin to see yourself as a localized expression of something vast. Your awareness is not a meaningless flicker in an indifferent void. It is the universe experiencing itself, exploring its possibilities through your unique perspective. Every thought you think, every moment you notice is part of the cosmos reflecting on itself. And what about free will? If consciousness is tied to quantum processes, then your choices matter in a very real sense. At every moment, you are helping collapse potential futures into actual reality. You are not just a passenger on the ride of existence. You are a co-creator. The decisions you make ripple outward into the fabric of reality, influencing outcomes not just for yourself, but for others, and perhaps even for the universe itself. This does not mean you control everything. Life will still surprise you, challenge you, and sometimes break you open. But even in those moments, your awareness participates in the unfolding. Your perspective shapes the meaning of events, and your choices guide how you grow through them. Consciousness gives you agency. Now consider connection. If all awareness is part of the same underlying field, then you are never truly separate from anyone or anything. What you experience as individuality is real, but it is not the whole story. Beneath the surface, you and I, the people you love, even the strangers you'll never meet, are expressions of the same awareness. This changes how we might treat one another. Kindness is no longer just a moral choice. It is recognition of truth, that the same consciousness flows through all beings. To harm another is, in a sense, to harm yourself. To lift another is to lift the whole. This realization also reshapes death. If consciousness is fundamental, then when someone you love dies, their wave has dissolved back into the ocean. You may miss the wave, the form, the sound, the uniqueness, but the essence remains. They were never separate from the field, and neither are you. In this way, separation is an illusion, and reunion is inevitable. The idea that the universe itself may be conscious is not new. Ancient traditions have long described reality as a living whole, a mind-like cosmos. What's new is that physics, neuroscience, and information theory are beginning to circle around the same possibility. Perhaps the universe is not dead matter, but a vast field of awareness. Perhaps your brain does not generate consciousness, but participates in it. This would mean that the great cosmic story is not only about stars and galaxies, but also about minds. The evolution of consciousness is as much a part of the universe's unfolding as the formation of matter. Through you, the universe gains the ability to reflect, imagine, and create. So what do we do with this? It is one thing to marvel at the idea, but another to live by it. If your consciousness is connected to the universe, then your daily life takes on new meaning. Every act of awareness is sacred. Every choice participates in the creation of reality. Every moment of compassion reinforces the truth of unity. You are not powerless in a vast, indifferent cosmos. You are the cosmos, awake in human form, with the ability to shape how existence unfolds through you. This does not solve every mystery. Consciousness remains elusive, and science is far from a final answer. But perhaps that is the point. Mystery itself may be the fuel of awareness, the invitation to keep exploring. Consciousness is the question that never ends, because it is the one asking. So when you sit quietly and notice your breath, when you gaze at the stars, when you fall into love, when you create, when you grieve, when you wonder, you are participating in the great cosmic experiment. You are the meeting point of mind and universe, the place where possibility becomes reality, the mirror in which existence sees itself. And maybe that is the answer. Consciousness exists so the universe can wonder about itself. You are that wondering right now. Thank you for staying with this exploration. If you've made it this far, I want to leave you with a question. If your brain really is connected to the universe, how will you live differently knowing that? Will you treat yourself with more care, others with more compassion? Will you see challenges not as accidents, but as invitations from the cosmos to expand awareness? Whatever you choose, remember this. You are not small, you are not separate, and you are not meaningless. You are the living cosmos, aware of itself, unfolding in human form. And with that, we close this journey.